Hey, Stewart's Chapel, this is Don Pierson, and this is Saturday's devotion, and I'm in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. Chapter 3, verse 5. Now, in verses 1 through 4, he talks about the last days, the kind of people that there will be in the last days. Now, when you look at all that list, all you see is immorality. And then it's almost like you have a head-on collision with a big surprise in verse 5. In verse 5 it says, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people turn away. Well, I understand, especially based on the message that I had shared a couple days ago, the importance of watching who you hang out with. Dealing with hanging out with people that are of the darkness. And these individuals are definitely of the darkness. But what is important, it says that they all have a form of godliness. A form of godliness, a form of religion, a form of a relationship with God. They have the form of a relationship with God, but they don't know the power of the relationship of God. You see, when I read this section, that verse, and I think of the previous, I think, oh, how can that be? I mean, these people are lovers of money, lovers of self, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without no self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors of God, headstrong, haughty, lovers. Hey, wait a second. I don't know where you noticed that. It doesn't list the sins that you and I normally list. In fact, most of these are pretty much the norm, even in the house of God. These individuals that sit with us, they're not into drunkenness or murder or stealing or lying. They're not into sexual sin. These are all, in fact, most of these would be, we pretty much tolerate. They have a form of godliness. They sit right there with us. So many of these jump out at me. One is disobedient to parent, so disrespectful. That seems to be the norm. And it doesn't matter. It's not about the young. It's the same thing with the old today. Disrespectful. No honoring of parents. But it's okay because they read their Bible and they pray and they sit in church. It's okay, you know? No, it's not okay. They're not forgiving. It's all right. They got reasons, right? They probably got a whole list of reasons why they're not going to do the 70 times 7. I mean, they did it once. They did it twice. But it didn't work out, so why keep on doing? No, they just keep on sitting right there with us. You see, normally when we think of a form of godliness and denying its power, we think of the illustration I'm going to use. Let me ask you a question. If I set up a store right here, and I told you that it was a store for the answer of prayer, and in it I had a machine that could make whatever you want in relationship to your desire for prayer, what you want answered, and you came in and you said, well, I want a new car. So I go back in the back and I make this little plastic or wax figure. I'll make a little plastic wax car, and I say, okay. And you pay me $30 for that plastic car, believing or thinking that what you're going to do is you're going to take that little wax car and you're going to go on a journey, and you're going to come back, and when you've done what I've told you to do with that wax car, God will give you that car. Well, let me tell you that I tell you to go outside, and behind the store I have built a 2 miles of solid granite sidewalk. And then I want you to go to the very big end of that 2 miles. I want you to take that wax car. I want you to get down on your knees, take your shoes off, and I want you to shuffle knee down that granite sidewalk, down a hill to where you can see at the bottom of the end of that sidewalk, I've built a long, giant fire pit. And that fire pit is hot. And underneath that fire pit, I have this metal trough so that whatever throws in can flow down that trough and be caught. And so I tell you to go up that 2 miles, to start crawling, and you join a whole line of people that are doing the same thing. Some have little wax babies because they want a baby. Some have a little wax house because they want a house. Some have cars like you. Some have hearts because they have a bad heart. Some have arms. They got a disease in their arm. On and on and on. You got the idea. And so you just join the line, and they're all doing the same thing. They're shuffling down that path. There's so many that the granite, that solid granite, has grooves that have been ground into that granite from people's knees. And you finally look down and you see that those gutters that have been made by people's knees, because you look down because your knees, they're hurting. They're raw. The bottom of your toes, and you feel like your toenails are coming off. The top of your feet are just raw. And you look down and you notice that gutter in that granite is filled with blood. There's blood coming from all the people behind you, and there's blood coming out your knee, filling up the people in front of it, and it's just running. This blood is running down that granite gutter, and it's your blood mixed with their blood. There's blood everywhere. And all of a sudden, I come out of that store, and I'm walking down the side of that sidewalk, and I'm spraying water on you, and I'm saying prayers over you, and you just keep on going. By the time you get there, your kneecaps are worn out. The blood is everywhere. They're raw. You've scraped them. But when you get down to that fiery altar, you stand up. And I'm standing right there. And I tell you, my brother, throw that wax car in that fire. Your prayer will be answered. When you throw that wax car in that trough, and all of a sudden, instantly, the fire is so hot, that little wax car just melts until it's nothing, and that hot wax falls in that gutter, runs down that gutter and runs into another gutter and runs, oh my goodness, that same gutter runs to the back of that store where you bought, and here's another guy getting ready to come into that same store, and he wants a car too, so they take that same melted wax, and he goes to the back and he forms a new car, and it goes on and on and on. If I told you to do that, you would probably think that's ridiculous. Did you know in Portugal that exists? In Portugal today, there's a place called Fátima. And everything I've told you is there. Exactly. It's a very dark place. A form of incredible cathedral built there. The Lord's Supper is given as people come off of their knees. The priests walk up and down spraying holy water on them and oil and praying for them. And the people get up and they pray and they get up and they leave believing. A form of godliness without its power. Now, you and I would say, well, I can't believe somebody do that. I guarantee it right now, today, this very moment, non-stop, 24/7, that solid 2-mile granite, there's a line waiting to get on it. It's a form of godliness but has no power. But I'm telling you something, the same thing happens in our church as people line up and come in day after day, week after week. They come in, they don't change their lives, they treat their parents ungodly, they do everything that is here, but they have a form of godliness. And they think they're accepted because they've sat in the church, sang a few songs, said a prayer, but they'll go home, and the rest of the week they'll do just as what it says here. You know what God says to do for you and I to do with these people? we are to turn away from such people. Have nothing to do with them. Well, what do you do if that's your son or your daughter? What do you do if it's your husband or your wife? What do you do if it's your friend? Well, brother and sister, you better guard yourself. You better guard yourself. Because you see, the boundaries of this command, there are none. There are no boundaries for this command. You better guard yourself. Or you will be crawling down that granite sidewalk. You'll be following the same path that they are. You will end up with a form of godliness without power. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.